of people in that east setting right now. But now, if I wanted the dead reckon west, and I'm not going to look at my GPS or compass, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to head west. As soon as I start moving, I'm heading south. South is every direction away. Now, here's the thing. Circumnavigation, millions of people, billions of people have circumnavigated the world east and west. Zero have done it south. Nobody has ever gone south and popped up on the other side of the world.
That's true, though. That's true.
Yeah.
You're right about that. You don't have to convince me of that one. That's definitely true.
Ken, you are a super smart guy. And the only reason you don't know that the Earth is a level plane and not a globe is because you never looked into.
Well, I've said we've lived on a plane like a million times in a million different videos. But something that you forgot to mention too, that's great support. Look up the Poincare disk model of projective geometry. You know that I've got 3,000 videos on that ferrocell. That device uses optically flat glass with like a nanoparticle thin layer of liquid between the two. You see the hologram on your credit card, right? Okay, great.
Yeah, we have several of those actually.
Oh, the ferrocells?
Yes.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay. So you know what they look like. Oh, okay.
We've not only bought some, but we've made them as well. We have a great big one. It's great.
Oh yeah. I mean, look at the holographic effect of volume that you actually get from that. I mean, we do live on a plane. I mean, I've said that endlessly.
Well, you've said that. Yeah, you said not only that, but you've also said that that it is the dielectric inertial plane. Yeah, life is where it's possible there, right?
Right. It's the lowest pressure mediation between the
there.
centrifugal divergent magnetic and centrifugal convergent dielectric, which are both the negative geometries of one another. That volume, or I mean, not that a torus is a sphere. I mean, it isn't really so a sphere. I mean, it's completely unreal. It is holographic. It's the reason why you see incredible volume off of a nano thin layer of liquid between two super flat pieces of glass. Like, wow, look at the volume, so holographic. But you're looking at a mirage, of course. Optics are wonderful.
Right. So,
wonderfully deceptive anyway.
The other thing is, this is the Georgia Guidestones, and the center stone here, there's this little hole, and you look through it, Polaris is through there, right? So in the heliocentric model, we're moving 4.5 billion miles a year in one direction, farther in another direction, and somehow over 40 years, Polaris has never moved from that hole, which is absolutely impossible. Parallax, whatever. And then the Glober argument is, well, it's so far away that with that 4.5 billion miles a year doesn't cause any parallax, which is ridiculous, because then you have the inverse square law of light issue and the size and all of that. But even on the globe model, they tell us in 4,000 years, we're going to have a new star, a new North Star. And 4,000 years ago, we had another one. Well, it would have moved a degree already in the 40 years it's been up, and that would knock it way out of this hole.
It would have moved also due to assumed precession of the Earth. So.
Right. And so the Earth is not moving. The sky is spinning around, and the North Star is almost at the exact center. It makes a tiny little circle, and all of the other stars. Now, when you get into the farther outer lands, all sorts of optics happen where, and I just say looking up at the sky is no way to prove the shape of the Earth. But when we people say
even stellarium, I was playing with that the other day. You can fast forward to whatever year you want. The North Star doesn't move.
Yeah.
And 4,500 AD and the North Star doesn't move. It's like, how could your program be correct if it's supposed to be accounting for?
And same in Starry Night.
The programmed response is, well, how come they can't see the North Star from the south? Well, there has been observatories as far as 30 degrees south that have seen it. But the reason is, if we were in a room with 10-foot high ceilings, and we say, okay, that light is the North Star, which is off to the side just a little bit, and then we expand that room to 10 miles wide. If I sent you a couple miles away to the outer south, right, I want to be able to see you, because the ceiling and the floor will merge together due to perspective. You'll look up and see completely different lights. I'll look up and see completely different lights. We'll call each other on our cell phone, and you can't see the north light above me, and I can't see the southern lights above you. That's exactly how it works. Ken, this topic is so incredible, and I'm going to just jump right to the end here, and I'm going to let Jaron. You probably have a couple of things you've been wanting to say, but Bob and I have been talking.
I'm good.
This is people say, well, what difference does it make? I still have to go to work. Well, that's how they got us. In school, they tell us that we only use 10% of our brains. Well, that's the objective of school, is to shut down the 90%, the creativity, the connection to nature, the connection to source, or whatever you want to call it. They don't want us using that. They don't want us doing vortex mathematics and sacred geometry. They don't want us expanding our minds and using our imagination, because that could challenge their authority. So they put us into the 10% slave mentality, and they have us spinning out of control where an asteroid is going to take us out. That's not going to happen. We're running out of water. There's infinite water. We're running out of food. That's ridiculous. We're overpopulated. Biggest joke in the world. Okay. They want us living in fear, so we will succumb to them and we'll give our free will away. And
it makes the self-replicating system, and it weakens our immune system. We're constantly stressed out about bills and
right.
all the nonsense. And
right.
It just makes us weaker and weaker and weaker.
So
you know what, Ken, I gotta comment on something really quick here. Ken, you are probably one of the smartest people I have ever come across. And
some people must like to hear that, but I don't. I'm not saying, don't say that, but I'm nobody.
I know. I'm not.
Well, I think I know where Bob's going with this comment. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make you feel uncomfortable or anything like that. But, something that you've always said since the day I started watching you is that, I don't get into conspiracies. I don't subscribe to that stuff or anything like that. And over the last 2 years, and we know what's happened over the last 2 years, you've been kind of changing your tune a little bit on that. And because it always occurred to me that you see what's going on in the world.
I know a lot of conspiracies are right, but I can't say that, because then they say, "Oh, you are a conspiracy theorist." After, tons and tons of so-called conspiracies. Term. Oh, of course it is. I know it is, but yeah,
absolutely.
By anybody, but by the rest of these fools, positions, I am a conspiracy theorist. I've always done that. That just means someone that's investigating the truth, and what everybody believes is lies and bullshit, and they got blinders on, and they're a bunch of brain dead, blind sheep. So yeah. And when we're
exactly,
and I'm not, and you're not, so I was always a conspiracy theorist.
Go ahead, Bob.
So that's why we've always been a little bit puzzled about that, because it's like Ken is smart enough to see what's happening in the world, and I'm sure you even see the deeper meaning of what's going on behind the COVID and all that. We won't talk about that because we can't. But
that tells you everything you need to know right there, that we can't talk about it.
100%.
Exactly.
100%.
Exactly.
And don't forget that the Ivor stuff is the cure. And don't let anybody. A lot of my friends were murdered. 2 of my best friends were murdered on remdesivir.
My mother.
Do not let your
mother.
Sorry, go ahead.
Our other friend's mother. Rob Skiba was one of the main voices in the flat Earth, and he went to the hospital, and they put him on remdesivir and ventilator.
Hey, easy, careful. We're not gonna be able to put this.
Beep.
You'll edit that out. Edit it out.
actually, we should. But just real quick, this isn't a fringe thing. This is these are the people. Let me just pull up the world map here. These are the people, just a small fraction of the people that know that the Earth is flat. These are the people. Okay, this is the fastest growing wave of truth. This is the United Kingdom. This is just a fraction of the people that now know what we're talking to you about. And it's growing faster and faster. And we're literally going to hit that parabolic tipping point coming very soon. So
we've noticed something, that nobody who opens their eyes to this deception can ever go back.
Yeah.
Because it becomes impossible. Like for me, it doesn't, I just can no longer jive with the spinning ball in the vacuum of space, and we're flying at crazy speeds going around a sun that's 900,000 miles wide. Because I just need evidence. And science loves to tell you, extraordinary claims requires extraordinary evidence. Well, except for theirs, right? They just teach it to kindergartners, and that's forgot about the part of extraordinary evidence. Which if you give it to me.
Yeah. So
they'll tell you that magnets are talking to each other. Not my words, their words. They're telling you that magnets are talking to each other with virtual photons, and yet they're the ones that have their finger on the truth of the world, right?
Right. Sure.
Amen.
Unicorns, leprechauns. Yeah. Okay. Whatever.
Right. So, I don't remember if I heard you mention Aristophanes last night or whatever. That's another big one is Aristophanes. He assumed that the sun rays were coming in parallel because of a distant sun. There's two problems there. No one's ever seen parallel rays. And the other thing is they had a distant sun. How is a distant sun orbiting a tiny speck Earth? Okay, that makes no sense. So they can't even get their lies right. But when you look at his experiment with the sticks and shadows, it works on a flat Earth. It works on a globe Earth, right? You can take the same shadow length right here and do some spherical geometry to figure out the size of the sphere. Well, on a flat Earth with a small local sun, no shadow, same geometry, you can figure out the sphericity of this flat plane. Okay. Right. No one's ever seen curvature. No one's ever measured for axial rotation. Actually, we have, but it actually proves the opposite. So there is no curvature. You can't have infinite space vacuum next to a pressurized atmosphere. Go ahead, Jaron.
I was going to say, Ken knows about Michelson-Morley. So
yeah.
There.
Yeah. So, and you know about Michelson-Gale also, I assume, yes? Okay. So Michelson-Gale basically told us that they got a rotation of 15 degrees per hour of the ether rotating around the Earth. Now, I don't know how much you know about flat Earth, but I was in a kind of a feature movie about that, and it was a hit piece. It turned out to be a hit piece that went viral on Netflix and everything. And we had an opportunity because we actually have a flat Earth scientific group called FE Core. And what we did is we purchased a fiber optic gyro, which of course is a laser interferometer essentially. And because we wanted to find out, well, is the Earth turning or is it stable? Well, to our surprise, when we turned on that fiber optic gyro, we registered a 15 degree per hour drift. And it blew us away. We didn't know what to do. We thought about, different ways to block that to see if we could isolate what it was. Even thought about encasing it in bismuth, right? Per, one of the things you were talking about. But none of that stuff worked until we said, well, if it's the ether that's actually turning, then what we need to do is see if it has a different rate of turn at different elevations of the sun at the same latitudes, right? Mm-hmm. Because on a ball Earth, that shouldn't be possible. But on the flat Earth model, it absolutely would be. And lo and behold, we definitely got some variance between our first test site, which was Pikes Peak in Colorado at 14,125 feet. And then we went out east to the Eastern Plains on the same latitude line to about 4,500 feet. So we had a 10,000 foot variance, and we got a very substantial rate of change on that rotation. So that basically told us, well, that isn't then the rotation of the Earth that we're registering. So then we found out about Michelson-Gale, and Michelson-Gale said, okay, yeah, we detected the same thing. How do we determine what it is? So then along comes Airy's failure, right? And Airy's failure, I guess it had already been done by then, but it's a simple optical experiment, which we are going to reproduce in FE Core, that you take a telescope and you point it at the stars. Well, first of all, are you familiar with it? Airy's failure?
No.
Okay, so you take a telescope, you point it at the stars, and if and then you take that as a reference, and then you fill the front of the telescope up with water, which theoretically would slow the light coming in to the telescope, slow it down. And the idea is that if the light was already coming in at the correct angle, meaning that it's the sky that is turning above us, then they would not have to adjust the telescope. And if it did have to be adjusted, that meant that the Earth is spinning below it. Well, lo and behold, the telescope did not have to be adjusted, which meant that it was already coming in at the correct angle, which meant that it's the stars that are rotating above the Earth, and not the other way around.
That's a fascinating experiment. That's really cool. I need to look that up.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely share some information on it with you. So, but the whole 9 yards is, of course, then Michelson-Morley came in and they ran their experiment, and they got something like a small percentage, like 10% of what they expected for an Earth rotation. But, they didn't know exactly what to make of that. But if the ether is spinning, and what they were doing is the Michelson-Morley experiment was made to measure linear motion, they were just kind of catching that edge of the, arc rotation.
Ken,
So, anyway.
let me run I brought it up before. I just want to run you through a size thing. So if this is the sun, the earth is a tiny BB next to it, a tiny little pebble, right? And so the sun, if the sun was just a mile over your head, it would fill the entire sky from horizon to horizon. So if I move the sun 93 million miles away, due to perspective, it becomes the size of a coin held at arm's length. That's a massive reduction. The entire sky to the size of a coin. So that's 8 light minutes away. If I doubled the distance, how much smaller would that sun get? A lot smaller. But let's be real safe here. If I go 24 times farther, okay, that's 3 light days. Okay, 3 light days away. It's scientifically provable that its angular size is far too small for your eye to see. Far too small by magnitudes. Okay, that's 3 light days away. All right. And then forgetting the inverse square law problem. You know what the inverse square law is, right?
Yes.
Do you? Okay. Yeah. So it's the light would never make it to us. It's like blow up like if I had a balloon and the balloon was the light and I blew the balloon up to a foot wide, the balloon's pretty thin. Now blow it up to 10 miles wide. Is there any balloon left? Okay. So the all of the light can't make it. So at 3 light days away, we can't see the sun. Then they tell us Polaris is 46 times bigger. Let's make it 48 times bigger. Okay. So to make it equal at 6 light days away to 48 times 3 light days, six light days away, Polaris would also be scientifically provable too small to see, ignoring the inverse square law problem. Okay. Which makes it far worse. That's at 6 light days away. They tell us it's 433 light years away and we can see it. 433 light years. That is absolutely insanity. And this is Arcturus through a P900 super zoom camera. Okay. This is here within the Earth system. They tell us it's 211 trillion miles away. Ken, do you know how long 1 trillion seconds is?
Oh, Lord. No, I don't.
It's 31,000 years. So if I was traveling at 1 mile per second for 1 trillion seconds, that's going to take me 31,000 years. And I have to do that 210 more times to get to this star that I can see with my naked eye.
I was thinking with the P9000, you said?
P900.
P900.
I mean, that's what I meant to say, P900 Nikon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so think about that. 211 trillion miles away. If I'm going 3,600 miles an hour, right? For 1 trillion seconds, that's 31,000 years. I'm only 1/211th of the way there. And I could see this with my naked eye. And that light is bright enough. How bright would that have to be?
No sense.
None of it. This is where people, even people as smart as you, our brains just short circuit because we were never taught to deal with numbers like that. We're like, well, somebody figured it out.
I was just thinking that same thing, of course.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? A little tidbit, real quick, David.
Yeah.
Tidbit for you, Ken, is one of the things that we looked into in the inverse square law of light and also RF, which works the same for RF radiation, is if you take a measurement of the moon, a full moon here on Earth, it's somewhere between 0.1 lux and 1 lux. Okay, you can read a book by it, right, on a full moon.
Right.
So if you plug that equation into the inverse law and backtrack it to its source, to the moon at 238,000 miles away, you want to take a guess what the light intensity would be when it gets there? Or when it sources from there, I should say. What it would have to be in order to arrive here at 1 lux.
I don't know. What would it be?
About 14.7 quadrillion lumens. That's absurd.
You would need sunglasses to see that.
that you vaporize. And the other thing that they tell us, Ken, is like spacecraft like Voyager 1, who, they were talking about how they just fired it up, a few months back. And it's like, 3 billion miles away now? And they said, so Voyager 1 is basically using a transmitter power that has about 25 watts of power, and then it's running through its little parabolic dish, which, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 dB gain. So it doesn't have a really high ERP coming out of it. So NASA says that when that signal reaches Earth, It comes in at 1/10 trillionth of a billionth of a watt. So that's 1/10 trillionth of a picowatt. Now, radio receivers, their sensitivity is measured in microwatts. They don't even go into picowatts.
No, I know that.
And
And
so they're lying to us.
And
There's
they
no
tell
way that's
us-
possible.
they tell us that our atmosphere or the radiation belts stop all these dangerous X-rays from cooking us, but they can't stop a radio wave from the distant
Yeah,
Voyager.
it band passes 2 meters for the hams,
Right.
and it band passes 2.4 gigahertz.
And-
Really, how does it do that?
And I'm not sure if you remember the Red Bull space jump, but they lost communication. They were losing communication with him at 120,000 feet, right? They were directly underneath him, and they could almost not communicate with the guy on a balloon
And
127,000
they were
feet above him.
probably transmitting 5 watts or more doing that. Though.
I probably more, right? Right. And so all of this, all of
it's
space,
absurd.
all of the, and people go, well, how come Russia wouldn't tell on us? Well, we come from the camp that all of these countries, the division of countries is an illusion. They're all in it together, right? All of the space agencies, they're all in it together. There might be some rogue stuff going on. Like if you look at the friggin' Chinese space station, it is the dumbest thing ever. You probably didn't even know there's a Chinese space station now.
But it's funny.
That's because there's no pictures of it.
Yeah.
I talked to a person in Russia about what they were taught about the space race, and of course, Russia tells their story, right? So they tell it as the stupid Americans went and spent all this money on the moon, but they were first in space. They were first animal in space, first woman in space, first orbit, first satellite. So it's like funny that people act like, oh, they would tell on each other, but really they tell two different stories that both fit their propaganda needs, right? That's
I lived in Russia for years.